Have you ever pushed some code, crossed your fingers, and hoped that nothing breaks in production? Yeah, not the best strategy, right? That's where CI/CD pipelines come in. It's your safety net, your assembly line, and your best friend in modern software delivery. CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery, or deployment. And the first bit, continuous integration, it means that every time someone commits a code, it is automatically built and tested. You Basic idea is that you don't wait for weeks to merge your changes and find all those piles of bugs at the very end of your development process, but instead you catch them early and commit as much as possible to run that pipeline in a continuous way. And continuous delivery or the deployment, the second part of that CD part, it's all about getting those changes safely to production as soon as possible with minimal manual steps and ideally without any drama. Every pipeline has the basic source, build, test, and deploy parts of it. But here is what I think good looks like for each of those steps with actual tools. Number one is a source. So we use something like GitHub or GitLab or Azure DevOps with branch protection rules. And you have signed commits and pull request checks to prevent anything goes type of merges. A good example would be GitHub Actions that I highlighted in this channel quite a lot, which can block merges until all of the tests pass. After that, you can basically move those two steps in between, but I would usually put tests first. You run your unit tests and integration tests in an automatic way against your source code and check that everything is green. If some of those tests are not good, then basically you are not needed. You don't need to build your application. On top of that, it is really good to add something like static code analysis or the dynamic code analysis with tools like 3D or Avast Zap, but it is up to you to use it. As I said, number three is build. You use your Maven or your .NET or Docker builds that are reproducible, so the results are the same for each of the same code bases, and you store those build artifacts in a registry of some sort, like JFrog Artifactory or Google Cloud Platform Artifact Registry and so on. And you sign those artifacts so you know exactly what you produced and how to use them. After that, number four is deployed. You don't just kubectl apply to prod. You use something like ArgoCD or Flux for GitOps and use Argo Rollouts for progressive deployments. A good example could be that you deploy first a canary release with, say, 5% of your traffic to monitor, and then you automatically promote this release or rollback if something goes wrong. And based on that monitor, it's actually number five, a very important bit that is very often forgotten, is you need to tie your deployments to observability. For example, you might use Prometheus and Grafana to track error rates and latency, and you basically double check that your SLOs are not violated with that canary release. You deploy something, you wait for a certain period of time and monitor how your application is behaving. And if everything is good, you can promote, and if not, then you can automatically roll back. And this isn't just CI/CD, it's CI/CD with SRE principle baked in. Shipping straight to prod is like skydiving without checking your parachute. And good CI/CD pipeline doesn't just deploy once, it stages deployments across different environments with automated tests and checks in between. That's what makes it reliable, and we are talking about SRE principles here, right? So, what are the steps in the pipeline, in a good pipeline? It's not just one big jump, and the first small step that we take to cross this chasm between code on your local machine all towards the production environment is basically you need to build your code. There, while you are building the code, you run your unit tests and check that everything is good as much as possible. After that, we start the deployment to dev environment. The purpose of this environment is quick feedback for developers to run some feature previews and be able to see how everything works with your hands pretty much. After that, I usually like to have a staging environment or UAT environment or QA, however you would like to call it, but it is a production-like environment, so it is as close in terms of specs to production as possible. And there you can run your integration tests and your performance checks and perform the funniest thing of all, the chaos testing. After that, in your pipeline, we are going to run the production deployment, but we are not going to deploy everything right away. The first step would be probably the canary release, where you just a limited rollout with real traffic and to monitor against your SLOs. And when everything is good and green, then automatically you do the full production release. You basically promote your canary release to the production one when everything is healthy and you have everything. That way, each environment, it actually reduces the risk of your production environment and have its own automated checks, and no human should manually just bless the deployment and provide deploy to production or say that everything is fine. And as I say, most people stop at deploy to prod, but that's a mistake. And for SREs, monitoring is part of the pipeline. Every deployment pretty much is an observable event, and the metrics are tied to build IDs. So when the latency spikes, you know which commit caused it and can just work on it. Automated rollbacks on top of that can be used automatically, and when your budgets are threatened, then you definitely want to roll back and do not burn all of your budget trying to debug something in production. And let's take a look at this pipeline over there. I just briefly put a draft of it, just as a illustration purposes. So first, as I said, we build something, and it doesn't really matter which thing we build, but we run the unit tests as part of this, and then we wrap everything into a Docker image. After that, we try to deploy to environment, doesn't really matter which one. And over here, I just, as an example, using the ArgoCD to promote the image. But the most interesting bit is that after we deploy it, we have a performance test stage, which happens after the deployment. And here I suggest that we can use the K6 as a tool to just run the performance tests. As you can see over here, we try to hit the homepage of our application, doesn't really matter which one, and we monitor two of the very important or two of the very common metrics in the SRE world. So first of all, we check the latency, and over here we say that we want our application to be performant enough, and that 95% of all of the calls that we do over the 30 seconds period of time, just as a test right after the deployment, they should be under 500 milliseconds. And on top of that, we don't want to have more than 1% of failures. So that's your actual availability of your application, not only how fast is that. And basically, we want to see that the application returns status of 200, everything is okay. And we can run this as part of our deployment. If this fails, then the whole pipeline will fail and we can roll back this deployment. So that's our automation. For SREs, environments and automated tests are not bureaucracy, they are automation of safety. And your budgets are enforced in real time, your toil is reduced because of promotion between environments, doesn't need any manual approval, and pipelines become boring, predictable, and reliable. And boring is good in that case, because that's basically a holy grail of delivery. Instead of spending your time fighting chaos, you can spend that time drinking coffee, which is good. So if your CI/CD pipeline is one step from code to production, you don't have a pipeline. No, you have a cannon. And the real SRE grade pipeline, it flows through multiple environments and validates each step and only promotes code when it is proven that the code is reliable and can do what it needs to be doing. If you want me to dig deeper into things like automation rollback or deployment strategies or tying those pipelines to SLOs, let me know in the comments below. And remember, reliability is not negotiable.